Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors for Thursday, September 15th, 2016. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Good evening, Deb. Would you please call the roll?
My pleasure. Mr. Sergini.
Here.
Ms. Ekman.
Here.
Mr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. McFarland. Here. Mr. Zimmerman. I'm sorry, Ms. Zimmerman.
Thank you very much. Prior to the meeting this evening, an executive session was held to discuss legal and real estate matters. First item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of our most recent meeting as well as those of our various boards and commissions, the monthly reports from staff and department heads, as well as fiscal matters. And at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Absent item C2. C2 we are going to table at this time. So it would be a motion to approve 1A, B, and C1.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board? From the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, item 2A, consideration of a request for a waiver pursuant to Chapter 83, which involves open burning requirements to construct an outdoor fireplace a minimum of 15 feet from combustible materials, and this deals with 2807 Foster Avenue, and Mike Brzezinski has information. Good evening, Mike.
Before the board's consideration is a waiver request from the property owner and the contractor involved with a recent construction of a patio and fire pit at a property at 2807 Foster. What has occurred is that the plans that were submitted did not have the fire pit listed or identified, and so the permit was issued without the review of the distance between the fire pit and from the house. Upon a subsequent physical inspection, which is customary in a project like this, the code enforcement officer determined that the setback from the house was between 11 and 12 feet, which does not meet the ordinance requirements for such a structure. Our township ordinance, as was identified and I think was included in your packet, requires a distance of 15 feet. So we as staff obviously aren't able to administratively waive something like that. So it's up for the board's consideration. I believe representatives are here to discuss if you have any questions about the project itself.
Okay. The homeowners are here? Yep. Yep. Could you come forward, please? Thanks. Thank you for coming out. Good evening.
Hi.
What happened?
I'm Darren from AMC.
Hi.
AMC Nursing and Landscape.
Mhm.
When we design hardscape projects, and it includes fire, we typically design to the National Fire Protection Agency standard, which is 10 feet. And we subsequently design it. The fire pit actually resides 12 feet from the property, where we felt that with more townships than one, and obviously other townships like yourself might have a superseding ordinance, which I was not aware of. But when the design was done, the fire pit was not labeled on the design itself, but and I can't defend that. But it is within the national guidelines. We did do follow-up research after the project was failed, and through different insurance agencies, Allstate, Nationwide, they all require 10 feet because it's a national code. as well as just National Fire Protection, which many townships do go by, and that's why we do design to that. It was simply a mislabeling of the project itself. There was a symbol on the drawing, which Mike, their code enforcement officer, did notice, but he was not aware of what it was, but regardless, he passed the project. So we just went forward with installing the project, as it was assumed to be approved. We did have a further meeting with Mike, and they went further beyond that to speak with your fire marshal, Charlie, I think his name is. And through an email, I wound up getting a response saying that they do not feel it will be it won't compromise any safety issues, because it is within the National Fire Code. We're just asking for a waiver to try to not disrupt Amy and Chris's life anymore with tearing the project out and rebuilding. We obviously wouldn't want to do that because it is installed very nicely. I'm not sure if you guys saw pictures of what have you, but more or less, we're just looking for a waiver, only because it's in with the national guidelines. Your own fire marshal deems it to be safe. I guess that's all we're looking for. It does fall within the guidelines of the national.
I don't have a problem granting this waiver.
I just have a question for you, Mike. What triggered the submission of the permit to begin with?
Any patio project would have triggered a zoning application at least.
There's a size requirement though, right? If it's
No, we would-
If I may, I believe it's because we were replacing our fencing and changing the use of our backyard to having our fence enclosed around our pool to using our home as a barrier with fencing. So Darren included that on the permit, mainly for fencing.
Okay.
When he came out to do the inspection, he saw the fire pit, and that's when all this.
And we weren't trying to hide it.
No, there
It was
no
on the
sense.
drawing. It's just-
But I guess the lesson is to very explicitly include the fire pit or a fire pit moving forward. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we put
Certainly-
a symbol on it, just wasn't labeled on
Right.
it. And like I said, the code enforcement officer did notice the symbol, he just didn't, and I can't blame him for not going further to ask questions, because it's his job, just,
Sure.
he might have thought it was a table.
And
that was drawn on.
Don't want to inconvenience
I
our
certainly
residents.
don't want to have
Yeah.
to face ripping it out again. I mean, it looks beautiful. We're very happy with it, and if it doesn't compromise safety, I would just ask for the board to be accepting of the national code that determines safety.
We have an aerial view also, but it's in black and white. Vegetation in the area, is anything near there?
Very little. We
The
took
only
just about every
vegetation-
tree we have down.
Maybe the vegetation is
We have a
30 feet from there.
Okay.
That actually is not a current, I don't think.
Yeah, this, these trees.
That's what
will
we have.
exist here.
Or the trees on the property line.
The project area is here, and the closest trees are maybe 30, 40 feet away from the project itself.
So that was prior to all the work at
Right.
Image.
Can I just ask for some clarification? Looking at that print, are you measuring the distance from the center of the fire pit to the corner of the roof line that's shown? That's the distance that's being measured, right?
Exactly. It's 12 feet to the surrounding block to the fire pit. It's another 10 inches to the metal ring of the fire pit. But
Okay,
according
so
to
it's,
the code enforcement officer, it is to the brick, to the blockwork is what he's.
to the edge of the block, not
the
to,
edge
not
of
to the
block,
center, not to the
actual
center.
Fire burning pit itself.
Okay.
It's
And
12 feet to the blockwork.
And I think, I'm pretty sure I heard you say this, but I just wanted to confirm, your homeowner's insurance and your coverage is not jeopardized in any way by having a 12-foot clearance rather than a 15?
Correct. If the board accepts it, our insurance company accepts it.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I would make a motion to grant the waiver request.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? From the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Come have some s'mores.
That sounds wonderful. Enjoy your backyard. Thank you very much. Item 2B on the agenda, review of bids for Crescent Street lots, and John Rice has some information about that. John?
As the board knows, the sale of two small lots that the township acquired many years ago was advertised. The newspaper with a bid that was opened this past Monday. There was one bidder, Mr. James Jones. His proposal was to restrict the property to one home and also to swap an existing lot that he currently owns and convey that back to the township. There was no other compensation proposed in the bid. I think at this point, I'd recommend that the board, because you have 60 days to act on this bid. So I would table it for tonight so that we can get a little more information about the, we know the location of the lot proposed to be swapped. It's on a map, but I think physically we need to look at this and then further discuss the bid with Mr. Jones. One of the requirements of the bid was that there had to be an agreement of sale entered into with Mr. Jones and the township, and before the board would approve any bid, we need that in hand. So for tonight, we'll have a discussion with Mr. Jones, Allison and I, and I would just recommend for tonight, delay any action on this and table the bid.
Okay. Is there a motion to table?
Motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? I would just say, Mr. Jones, thank you for your patience. You want to come up? Can you come up to the microphone? Thank you.
What happens next, then? Like,
We're going to talk about an agreement of sale and some additional questions that have been raised by the board members, and I have some questions about, there's a restriction that you've offered to give on the property to be conveyed. That's something that would have to be drafted, so there's some additional things that need to be done before the board can act on this.
okay, and it is a contiguous lot to open space?
Right.
The park?
So-
Okay, so I come to, no, I don't have to come to any more meetings, I just, we
No,
get to
we'll
meet?
contact
Yeah,
you.
we'll contact you.
Work through all the paperwork, and then we'll take it up for a vote.
Okey-dokes.
Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favor of tabling item 2B for the evening, please say aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item 2C, approval of the Mascaro ball field lease. John?
Okay. As the board knows, the Mascara family has proposed to construct a state-of-the-art baseball field with additional amenities, and they are soon to get underway on the construction of that. What is in front of the board tonight is a lease agreement which would lease this to Lower Providence Township. The township would assume, it's a 20-year lease, the township would assume responsibility for maintenance and repair and upkeep. I think what has been discussed is that the township would delegate a lot of that to the organizations that would be using the field, similar to what you've done with other parks in the township. The Mascara organization intends to do all the construction starting this fall. In fact, the baseball organization would have primary use of this, subject to the township's normal policies and procedures. So the lease has been back and forth between myself and Bill Fox, who's counsel for the Mascara organization, and I spoke to him probably about a week and a half ago. There were a couple minor edits. They're reflected in this draft that's before the board tonight. So from my perspective, this is ready to go. This was part of the land development plan approval that this be done also. And unless the board has any questions, it's a motion to approve, and hopefully you'll be the proud tenants of the baseball complex next year.
Any questions for John?
I just have one, John, on Section C, Paragraph 4. The statement is, Methacton Baseball shall have primary use of the BFC subject to policies and procedures. Is the term Methacton Baseball a specific, does that identify a specific organization? Could that be interpreted to mean the school district, the way it's written? Or is it intended to identify a very specific organization?
That's intended to identify the Methacton Baseball Organization.
Association is what it's
Association.
missing.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a clarification, but later, if a third party were to read it, I mean, I could read that to mean anybody in Methacton playing baseball.
Patrick, the official name, Methacton Baseball Association?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I can certainly add that in here. Paragraph 4.
Any additional questions? Okay, I would look for a motion to approve the Mascaro Ball Field lease conditioned to adding the word association to Section C, Paragraph 4, to read Methacton Baseball Association. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional questions from the board? The audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. It's a very exciting project. Followed by an equally exciting project, 2D, consideration of fee agreement with McMahon Associates for the multimodal grant. And John and Allison have information, or John has information? Or Allison?
I'm going to defer to Allison. I have reviewed the agreement between the township and McMahon, and I have it lays out what the fees are and, what's covered under the fee proposal. So I don't have any particular comments on it. I know Allison there's been some discussions with McMahon, and I don't know whether Tim's been involved in it or not, but I'm going to defer to.
Well, this has truly been an all-staff project, as navigating the PennDOT system has been a little bit tedious and a little bit cumbersome. But this fee agreement did have to go through PennDOT first for their approval, which it has received. I think there was a few rejections early on, and so there was some back and forth with PennDOT on it. And the total amount of the agreement, the maximum agreement cost, and it may not necessarily reach this amount because there are some studies that are somewhat unknown until they get in there and begin to do some of the preliminary design work, archaeological, environmental issues that may or may not exist. But the maximum agreement cost would be $1,390,782.41. And that would be for the realignment of the intersection of Crawford, Eagleville, Park roads.
Excellent.
And we do have a $1 million multimodal grant that will be used to pay for this. There is a cost sharing, which we do have funding from alternate means to provide.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board?
So Allison, this is a project obviously we've been working on for a long time here in the township, which we received, I think, $2.2 million from Audubon Land Development towards it, and $1 million from PennDOT, and we have another multimodal grant out to PennDOT to pay for the balance. So nobody's taxes are being raised for this, but at the same time, we're straightening out that intersection to make it a true T intersection, which will cut down on some of the accidents that are down there. Right, Chief?
Excellent point. Anyone else?
Again, just a clarification, there are two price points within the total contract. The first, the preliminary design and the final design. And
Correct.
And you mentioned that this is a cost plus fixed fee, so these numbers are not to exceed. Is that right?
That is my understanding, yes.
And they would be done in two phases, meaning that there could be an amount of time perhaps between the completion of preliminary design and then the initiation of the final design, depending on other circumstances, meaning we don't necessarily commit to the full amount right now. It depends on what happens going forward.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in, Mr. Infant, a bit. We were very involved with PennDOT in discussing how this design process takes place. And we are very early in a design of an intersection. Oftentimes, these multimodal grants are issued for shovel-ready projects or projects that have a lot of design already complete. Since we are starting from scratch, there's a certain obligation to show PennDOT and others, environmentalists especially, various alignment options before a final alignment is chosen and approved. We have that work kind of done by Audubon Land, and they've got 2 or 3 alignments that we've looked at. We think there is certainly one preferred alignment that everyone will point toward, and we think our preliminary engineering studies will point us toward that solution. But there is a certain amount of work needed under that first phase to assure that we're on the right path. And so once we get through that preliminary design, we then hope that we can identify those things that we need to do with archaeologic, with right-of-way acquisition, with environmental, and potentially reduce that exposure to those fees as well. So there is a 2-phase approach. This work we need to do to define line and grade and all those things that might impact us, and then into that final design. But definitely a 2-step process.
Okay, so thank you for that. So that's a very valid reason why we would want to initiate this now in order to have that portion completed so that the state will be encouraged to go forward with the rest of it.
I think so.
Thank you.
Additional comments? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the fee agreement with McMahon Associates for the multimodal grant?
I'd like to make that motion, please.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, announcements. The Library Board of Trustees will meet on September 19th at 7 p.m. The Zoning Hearing Board meeting for September 22nd at 7 p.m. has been canceled. However, the Planning Commission meeting for September 28th at 7 p.m. will go forward. And prior to our next public meeting, the Township will hold its annual Fall Festival on Saturday, October 1st from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Eagleville Park. More information can be found at lptrec.com. Comments and other business. Any comments from the board?
I'd also like to mention that the library is having a comedy night on Friday, October 26th at Shannondale with local comedian Chip Chantry headlining it. So you can get your tickets through the library, and please come out and support the library and have a great evening with your friends.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I'll just make known, we had our Business Development Committee meeting, our monthly meeting. We are having quite a lot of potential reports on success of some properties that hopefully will soon to be redeveloped. One of which has already had a sketch plan that presented in front of the Planning Commission. That would be for the Collegeville Inn, assisted living facility. Really interesting plans that they're showing because their intent is to preserve the existing structure, which I don't ever recall seeing any plans for that property where they would actually keep that building. So it's very encouraging. So there's some other properties that are really seeing some interest. Nothing that we can announce officially, but we're getting really close, and so we're very excited.
Just reiterating what's been said here many times, this is a board that supports thoughtful business development. So I want to put that out there. Mr. Solicitor, anything?
No, nothing new.
Madam Manager? Staff? Okay, item 5, courtesy of the floor. Would anyone like to speak tonight? All right, moving on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Motion and a second. Motion and a second. I need to amend that. We will be adjourning into executive session. We do not intend to re-adjourn into public session this evening. We'll go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Okay, is there a motion? Or we have the motion, sorry. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Our next meeting is October 6th. Thank you and have a good night.
I'm going to catch you.
Yep.
To sign the lease.
Yeah.
I'll fix that second page.
Yep.
Over here.
Here.
Yep.